All right.
What's up? Welcome to, I got to say this right, Get Right Fantasy Network. We're live a little early than when this draft is actually going to start because we got a really cool show tonight. Kendall, why don't you tell the people what we are doing and give them a little breakdown of what's going on and then tell them why we're here and who the heck we are.
Right on, right on. Right. So you got Kendall Vanderbilt. That's me coming at you from the Fantasy Football Tavern. Phil Ruskin of The Extra Point. If you don't know who we are, definitely check out our channels. We'll be dropping that over in the comments there, making that happen. And so, we are affiliates of the Get Right Fantasy Network. Those that are in the Get Right Fantasy Network, you guys already know we're friendly faces. But if you're not, if we're in leagues with you, if you found us somewhere else and you don't know what's going on, so the Get Right crew, what they started a couple years ago, which me and Phil are absolutely in love with, and we're going to be live streaming tonight, as you can see on screen, is first week of the mock draft tournament that we run every year. So the basic idea, I'll break down the details in just a second, but big picture, we all love mock drafting. We all want some bragging rights. $50 in actual free dollars coming your way to the winner. So here's how it works: Monday through Thursday for 4 weeks, there's going to be a mock draft. Right, so 4 lobbies, 12 team. It's going to switch between 1 quarterback and super flex, but essentially it's like a normal mock draft. It's going to be a 3 wide receiver half PPR league setup, right? And then at the end of that draft, 6 of us over in Get Right, or the 6 of us that are judging, we're going to judge first through 6th place. First place gets 6 points. 6th place going to get a point. We're going to weigh all that together to essentially get a top 3 as voted by us for each of these drafts. Friday, the top 3 from Monday through Thursday are going to duke it out in a semifinal round. Same thing. Top 3 of that Friday semi is going to make it on to the final, which I'll get into in a second, right? So that's week 1. We do the same thing week 2, 3, and 4. 4 weeks, top 3 leaves us with a really, really awesome League of Champions. And we're going to put them through to a best ball tournament, a real best ball tournament on Underdog Fantasy. And they're going to play that out. They're going to play a full season long. They're going to do the draft. And the winner of that best ball league is going to be crowned our mock draft champion of 2024. So real good stuff, completely free to enter, right? You're going to be mock drafting in the middle of the week, make it to the semifinals, get to the finals, and then everyone gets to watch you hopefully take it down in the Underdog end of season tournament. And Phil, what am I missing there?
Nothing, man. We're stoked. We've got, it looks like we might have 2 open spots here. So if you're watching the channel, looks like Team 5 and Team 12. I don't know if we had an internet disconnect or if maybe we're just I don't know, maybe not available tonight. But yeah, I've got 2 spots left. Super excited for this. Again, Kendall and I will be judging as part of the Get Right Fantasy Network. So we won't actually be judging live on the show tonight, but you can get obviously some live feedback as we talk through some teams, some builds that we like, some different roster constructions. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Get Right Fantasy Network, and then make sure you subscribe to the Extra Point. That is my channel. The link is in the chat. And then definitely give my boy Kendall some love over at the Fantasy Football Tavern. Make sure you subscribe to his channel as well. We've got great Dynasty content. We've got series of videos talking about best and worst startup picks. Tomorrow night on my show, we are going to be doing a different mock draft, getting us ready for some redraft season. And then I know next week, Kendall, if you're around, man, I know we've been texting about it. I'm really excited for it, but I'm going to be going through some league winners and giving the folks a little bit of behind the peak curtain of who's some guys that you know about, you know the names, but you're maybe not targeting in drafts, and you should be. So some league winners coming up for you as we get into redraft season. So looks like we got all of the spots filled. And whenever this thing is ready to kick off, man, we are excited to be here tonight and obviously talk through some of the different teams.
Yeah, fun stuff. So me and Phil are not in this draft, right? We have an affiliate, a moderator, kind of running the draft. So we're just kicking back and gonna run some commentary over this. It's kind of fun. Saves us a little time since we have to judge this thing anyways. So this is it's pretty exciting since instead of just reading the final draft, we actually get to kind of watch it play out, which should be pretty fun. Just to remind everybody, since I don't think it's up on the screen for everybody, the format for this week's mock, right, is going to be It's a two running back, one quarterback this week. It's going to alternate week one. Everything's one QB. Week two is going to be super flex, but everything else that I talk about is going to stay the same. It's a two running back, three wide receiver, one flex, one tight end league, half PPR.
Yep.
Actually, Rosty, you're in the chat. It's half PPR, right?
It's half PPR. Yep.
Gotta change our show doc, brother.
Gotta change it. Yeah, I was actually thinking, Kendall, what are some of the things before we get started here that you're going to be looking for a single quarterback league? Are you trying to target, one of the high end quarterbacks early? Or are you trying to load up at the wide receiver and running back position and then maybe get a mid round, still a solid quarterback, but maybe a later round quarterback that's, in that tier 2, tier 3? What are some of your favorite ways to start a build?
So there's some builds I prefer a little bit more than others, but I know me and you, and I think you guys probably watch a lot of other, great fantasy content out there, right? I think one of the favorite terms is kind of stay water, let the board come to you, right? So some strategies are going to open themselves up. I want to see who's going to take it when the lane's open for them and who fades and goes another route and kind of how that plays out. This year in particular at quarterback, I don't want to say it's great or late like we've typically talked about at tight ends, because I think there's a lot more tiers inside the quarterback. I think if you want to completely punt quarterback, that is a strategy that hasn't always been viable.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty viable since the quarterbacks 10 through 14 are very viable this year. If you want to completely punt and go for a Jared Goff, a Stafford, something along those lines that go almost to the end of the draft, nearly undrafted, unless people are taking a second quarterback, I think it's very viable. I'm hoping they have a stacked pair with that at some point. The Puka Nacua Stafford, something I'm looking for. I'm on Rock Goff. So also, depending on who you want to take early, that can also set you up for kind of that late stack. If I'm not grabbing one of those very late quarterbacks, though, right? I really do. I don't want to see I'm not taking a quarterback before round 5, most likely. I don't care if it's Josh Allen. I just think the value is too good early, and the drop off to say Anthony Richardson isn't that crazy for me. And it looks like we are starting it up.
We're ready to go. Yeah. Oh, you got your volume on over there, brother.
Oh, good call. Let's
do
that. Huh?
He's got to mute that guy. Yep. We got Victorious here going with CD Lamb at the 103, saying you're lucky you're not in this draft with me tonight. Don't want to embarrass you guys. Victorious, we love you. We know that you are an avid subscriber to all of our channels. Good luck tonight, my guy. And I'm excited to see how he listens to all of our stuff. So I'm excited to see what his team ends up looking like. And I've just kept in the back of my mind that you, Kendall, are not taking a quarterback before round 5. So I just want to see who's available at that 4-5 turn to see what that strategy could end up looking like. So as we get into it here at the 101, Christian McCaffrey, and then obviously the receivers start coming off the board. Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb with Bijan Robinson. Interesting, Justin Jefferson going ahead of Brees, Jamar Chase, and Amon-Ra. Thoughts on that really early, Kendall?
Yeah, you're not seeing it as much. You're definitely seeing him go after Chase.
Yeah.
And then it's usually kind of a coin toss. I'm seeing him mostly go after the running backs. But I don't mind it overall. I mean, I think it's gotten to a point where I think there was an article or two that came out that, look, he's looking sharp. The quarterback play in the camp is looking decent enough. I think when you start hearing stuff from camp, everyone gets overly positive when the pre-camp stuff is always the monsters in the closet, new quarterback. So I think Jefferson, he fell pretty hard. Remember his ADP before even like the NFL draft. I mean, no one's really mock drafting at that point or anything, but in people's minds, he was higher. I think he started falling after the NFL draft happens. I think he creeps back up, and I think that's actually probably where he's going to end the season at. So I think it's a fine pick there.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting look. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Devontae Adams, number 2 in the league last year in targets behind atrocious quarterback play. We obviously would agree that whoever the starter is, it's probably going to be Sam Darnold week 1, but eventually it'll be JJ McCarthy. You're going to bet on the talent of Justin Jefferson over whoever the quarterback play is, right? And if Devontae Adams in Vegas can finish as the wide receiver 8 last season with an onslaught of, Jimmy G and Aiden O'Connell and God knows whoever else was in there throwing passes, right? I'm always going to bet on Justin Jefferson. I see his ADP coming back up a little bit. I think it's a little bit, I'm not going to say a stretch by any means. It's still Justin Jefferson. I would I would take Amon-Ra over JJ right now just because of the security with Goff and that offense in Detroit. But look, Jamar Chase, not in camp. Well, he's in camp, but he's a hold in right now, not practicing. CeeDee Lamb, not practicing. So I don't think either of those things are going to matter long term. But to your point about people get freaked out about camp or they get overhyped or underhyped, those are the kinds of things where Tyreek Hill going over CeeDee Lamb, I don't mind that anyway. But those are the kinds of things that as we get into August tomorrow, you might start to see a little bit of movement, not a ton, but a little bit of a shift there. So lots of receivers, lots of running backs coming off the board. Raf Danis here starting with Jamar Chase and Drake London. And then I can't read it that far away, but looks like Team 5 here with Justin Jefferson and Chris Olave is the only two teams to start receiver. It's early. It's only the second round, but anything stand out to you right away, Kendall, as we get into the 2-3 turn here?
I'm seeing a lot of balance. This is a mock draft tournament, right? If you play fantasy football, there's like a 98% chance you probably play poker too. And I think what we're seeing a lot of is let's just not lose the tournament in the first 2 rounds. Let's try to take a balanced approach, see what comes, not lock ourselves into something. So, we can see most teams going with, if they took wide receiver, they went running back or vice versa. I think that's very intentional. And I think it's probably because we got some smart drafters. They're probably trying to make just good overall decisions so that they can finish with, just a good draft, put themselves in a position to make some things happen, right? Because obviously we try stuff out in regular mock drafts, and sometimes you dig yourself into a hole, and sometimes you dig yourself out. But sometimes you drink a couple beers and you're like, well, that didn't work. This is not the time where I think that wants to happen. So that's kind of what I'm noticing. Definitely, a lot of chalk sticking mostly to ADP.
Pretty close to ADP.
Well.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I was going to say the one thing I'm not, and I think we both should do a good job of not doing tonight, is not talking about where we see tier breaks or where we see, different values, or maybe, oh, well, the wide receiver run just happened, time to positionally shift here because this is a tournament. I know you and I tend to do that a fair amount when we do our Friday night mocks. And so to me, like, that's fine because it's a Friday night mock. It's for, it's obviously enjoyable, but because this is a tournament, I think you and I'll probably save our, this is where the tier break is until the end, so we don't influence it. But right away, Shia LaBeouf going with 3 wide receivers, so 3 wide receiver league. Don't mind that start. Kendall, Josh Allen in the second round there at the turn, and Jalen Hurts in the third. So we got 2 quarterbacks off the board before the 5th. They're both ceiling guys. But only 1 tight end off the board, so pretty ADP wise, pretty on par, and obviously really running back and wide receiver heavy here to start. I do want to talk about your boy for 1 second because he just went off the board here. DJ Moore got the bag. Tell us about Mr. Moore in your Chicago Bears. Talk to us about what that season could potentially look like for him this year, obviously with Caleb Williams, and I think a lot to look forward to if you're a Bears fan.
Yes. Okay. Highlights for DJ Moore that I'm highlighting in particular. I'm a diehard Bears fan, but even so, even when I was a big Christian McCaffrey guy, and because of that, I watched a decent amount of the Panthers. Right. I mean, a lot of people did. They were a much better team before the last couple of years. Right. But I've always been a big DJ Moore guy. Saw him his rookie year, liked a lot what I saw on the field. What I think people kind of forget is Justin Fields was not exactly known to be an accurate quarterback. But still, with that, DJ Moore was I'd have to check my rankings, but I think he was like top 12, top 14 in the league in catch rate. So he's getting balls thrown with a reasonable ADOT. It wasn't just check down stuff, and he had a very, very good catch rate. So this tells me a couple things. When you get targeted at like 30+% target share, you're one of the only weapons on an offense. Defenses can scheme you out of the game if they really want to, and it was difficult, if not impossible, to do that to DJ Moore with very subpar quarterback play. So you bring in a clear upgrade in Caleb Williams, someone who wins by getting open and then has a fantastic catch. You saw some of the catch rate. You saw some of the plays last year where he's got some moves too. He's got a little elusiveness. I don't think he's going to take it all to the house, but tiny little bit of yak here and there. What I'm seeing for DJ Moore is I still think his target share stays at a very, very elite level. I think it's going to be hard to, put tremendous, bracket pressure on him when you look at the other weapons in the offense. They can take a very balanced approach. I think his touchdown upside does come down a little bit because I think Rome is going to be a very clear red zone weapon.
Right.
Caleb is also going to rush a couple in. Like you see some of the semi-mobile quarterbacks just because they can, they will at some point. So that's going to hurt Swift and it's going to hurt DJ a little bit. But I'm going to see a huge amount of consistency. I definitely would pencil him in for 1,200 plus yards, if not 1,300 plus. Probably have him in like 4 to 6 touchdown range. So I think we're going to see, I don't see like a top 5 finish for him that I think some people thought could be a thing with that type of target share. But yeah, liking what he can do. The bag for me really tells me that Keenan is just a 1-year rental. He'll probably sign somewhere else, but it really shows me that this offense, from like a dynasty perspective, like DJ Moore is locked in there. His dynasty value went up for me because him and Rome could become akin to what you see these other offenses that really channel through 2 main guys. You've got Waddle and Tyreek, right? You've got T and Chase. I think that could be DJ Rome in a really big
Brown
way.
And Smith.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch it. I think it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I mean, look, last year was the first season he was a wide receiver 1. It's his only wide receiver 1 finish in his career. You're right, Caleb Williams is an upgrade. I am with you on the yardage. I'm with you in the touchdown department. I think in Dynasty, he's obviously the guy. They've paid him as such. I do think I hear you on the 1-year rental, and I, for a very, very long time, have been on the Keenan as a 1-year rental train. I was thinking about it when I was reading up on DJ Moore's contract. Rome's on a rookie deal. Caleb's on a rookie deal. So they've paid Swift. They've paid Moore. Komet's been paid as well. I do think it's possible in the range of outcomes that if Keenan Allen has a better than decent season, that they give him one of those 2-year extensions with a 1-year out. You know what I mean? Because you're not paying Caleb and you're not paying Rome yet. So it's possible. I don't think there's really anything that's going to cut into DJ Moore's workload. I don't think there's anything that's going to cut into his target share. I think he's probably pretty safe. Like you, I think it's probably about 1,200 yards and 5 touchdowns. Last year he was 1,364 and 8. So to me, DJ Moore should have another wide receiver 1 season. Probably, I would say like 8 to 10 range. It's probably reasonable.
He's going to outproduce his ADP. I'm loving it. Hey, Rasta in the chat, appreciate throwing that out because we were not a part of Get Right last year, so we actually forget these things. But the reigning champ of the 2023 mock draft tournament's in the lobby here.
There we go.
Rafi Baum over there. So we're gonna have to take a look at his team. Phil, what are you thinking about Rafi Baum's team so far? What is he drafting out of the 8 spot?
8 spot. I mean, look, what I'm looking for, I'll be honest, and again, I'm not going to talk about tier breaks. I don't want to influence the draft, but what I'm looking for in the first couple rounds is ceiling. And I think you have that in Amon-Ra in a big way. And so to get Amon-Ra at the 108, probably a little bit of a steal. Again, there's no real steals in the first round, right? Almost all the players are fantastic. But Amon-Ra to me is, I think, a locked top 5 wide receiver this season. And I saw this I'm in so many different chats and channels. I don't remember where, but I saw it actually come up today. And I wanted to ask you this question. Do you think Amon-Ra can finish as the overall wide receiver 1 this season?
It would need to be a down year specifically at the touchdown position for the other top 3 or 4 guys in particular. I do think it's possible. It's a little bit of an outside chance for me just because I think his touchdown upside is lower than some of your elite red zone weapons. I mean, he is the slant god as well as the sun god. And I think while that gives him an elite floor, maybe the highest in the NFL, depending on who you talk to, I do think his elite ceiling, I mean, the chances he finishes 2 through 4 are significantly higher than 1 overall, because 1 overall is typically a very outlier in one particular area, and that usually is yards plus touchdowns. And I don't think he's probably going to do both. Plus, if Jameson Williams does, pick it up a little bit. Also, I mean, you would need a Jahmyr Gibbs injury.
Don't speak that into existence. If he were unavailable, Kendall, the magic words. We don't speak that into existence.
I mean, he's gonna get a little banged up.
He's gonna be just fine. He's gonna be just fine. He's gonna have a magical season, and everything is going to work out for us.
He'll take a 1-week vacation here and there. 16 games for him will be fantastic. It'll be great.
Amon-Ra finishes last year with 15 in yardage and 10 touchdowns. To me, I don't think Amon-Ra can finish as the overall wide receiver 1 simply because there's too many mouths to feed. Even if Laporta's touchdowns come down this year, right? There's Gibbs, there's Monty, there's Jameson Williams, who everyone, the hype train again is, getting off that track pretty quickly. Obviously, there's Amon-Ra and Laporta. So there's just too many guys that Goff's not a red zone rushing threat. So that's not the problem. But I love the pick. I do think he's a safe wide receiver, finishes in the top 5 again. I just don't see a wide receiver one ceiling for him with the, like you have, again, CeeDee Lamb. He's the only show in town. Tyreek, he's a freak. Yes, Waddle's there. Yes, Achane. They've got some other players, but like there's certain guys that's just, they're athletically just that much better, or it's CeeDee Lamb who's just so isolated that there's everything goes through him. So, but great value for Rafi Baum, the returning champ, to start with Amon-Ra here. And then Etienne and Pacheco coming back, getting a solid, top 5 tight end in McBride and Godwin. So I like the group, off to a good start. And as we start to get into, here it is, the 5-6 turn, Kendall, we see Anthony Richardson and Patrick Mahomes was available in the 5th round. So that means there's still some really good quarterbacks available here. So your strategy of not taking a quarterback before the 5th, I like it. I think there's some fantastic value here.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I'm drafting where I'm like, Hurts into the 4th. I just have to, right? And then all of a sudden I'm like, I could have gotten Mahomes in the 5th, and then it just that value just keeps on going. So another great thing about that 108 is it does open up a golf stack much later on, which is very, very easy. You can reach one round up and have it not be too bad. So hey, let's look at some lineups. I want to ask you about a couple lineups, see what you think. And I'll probably jump in here. It's a 60-second pick clock, but these picks have been absolutely lightning. So from a tier perspective, right? Tier 1, depending how you're looking at it, kind of tier 1 and tier 2 at QB is gone. We're kind of into the 3rd tier, which kind of, for me, kind of starts at like this. Not going to make a hard sells here, but like the Stroud Murray kind of starts a separate tier for me in a little bit. All the top tight ends are also off the board. Pitts kind of starts a separate tier for me. So we're kind of getting into these nuanced picks where I think this is where the draft gets tough. This is where roster construction versus player value, I think, really eats up a lot of your clock. I think the picks are going to slow down a little bit because I like this player, but I need this position.
Right.
And so this is where champions are made right here. So most teams with 3 wide receivers, from what I'm seeing, 2 teams with 3 running backs. So pretty balanced across the board. Right side of the board is a little bit lighter on tight ends compared to the left, but pretty balanced. I mean, this it's just a very balanced draft. I think everyone's kind of watching everybody else. No one wants to make a big mistake so far. Again, sticking pretty close to ADP. I think tight ends went a little bit earlier. Andrews and Kincaid usually get to the 4-5 turn into the 5th. So that's kind of one thing to notice. Looks like a lot of people decided to go a little bit running back early. I think in some previous, if I looked at like Monday and Tuesday, some people really went a little heavier wide receiver early and punted some of the other positions. What are you seeing so far? And then maybe we can kind of break down pick by pick what we're seeing, what we're liking, what we're disliking, and without giving too much away. And
I mean, the thing that I think that you said was spot on, right? This is where champions are made. I think once you get out of the first 50, players, right? The top 50 guys in the league. So basically the first 4 rounds of the draft, I think that's where, number 1, you can find tremendous value. And number 2, and I mentioned this at the top, that's where you can find some league winners, right? So we're going to be going through on my show Thursday nights, 7 p.m. Pacific time, the Extra Point. So not this week, tomorrow, because we're doing mock draft, but next week, we're going to go through league winners. And I think, to me, this is where I'm curious to see, who's thinking a little bit strategically. Again, you mentioned who's looking for maybe some positional need, but who's looking for some of those guys that really are going to be able to either have an outlier touchdown season, volume their way to a really good, wide receiver 3 that suddenly finishes inside as a wide receiver 2. We see Joe Burrow going off the board here to Shia LaBeouf, right? Joe Burrow, I was waiting for him to go off the board so I could make this comment. If I miss out and I'm not in a ton of redraft leagues, but I'll be in a couple in the next couple of weeks here. If I miss out on the elite of elite quarterbacks, Joe Burrow and Kyler Murray are the 2 quarterbacks that I'm specifically targeting. I think both are going to have, assuming everything presumes health, I think both are going to have really solid seasons. We love with the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey Benson to go with Trey McBride, to go with Michael Wilson and James Conner for Murray, and a healthy season for him. And look, T. Higgins can be grumpy or he can be happy, but he's still T. Higgins, to go with Jamar Chase. So I think there's a good season in store for both of those quarterbacks, Joe Burrow and Kyler Murray. So yeah, I like the value of some of these players and some of the teams I'm seeing right now, about a little over halfway through the draft. So yeah, again, we'll save my, I don't want to influence it, but
yeah, well, we can talk about rosters that we kind of like what they've done so far. We don't have to talk about what we like about the potential direction. I know I've had to bite my tongue a few times where I want to say, hey, that's how you do it, or I don't know about that. We'll see how they dig themselves out of this or whatever. So you don't know who you are, but we're thinking about you. But we can at least talk about what we like and maybe dislike a little bit. Hey, got to do it. So far, are you seeing anything interesting? I'll just, while you're kind of thinking through that, I had a quick answer for you, and that's I saw a couple of one of like kind of my rules of thumb. You can kind of change it each year. Is your onesies, your tight end, your quarterback, usually through 5 rounds. I'm only taking 1, not 2. You can definitely do it, right? I'm not saying it's impossible, but I do think it makes the rest of your draft, buckle up to switch from that beer to coffee. It's going to be a tough one, and so we did see that the 5 spot did go Hurts, Andrews. So 2 onesies through there, and then our 1 spot with Alan Laporta. So I'm curious to see how the rest of their draft kind of unfolds, as I know that can be a bit tricky if the board doesn't fall your way. What are you seeing in some rosters that you're looking, or who do you kind of like and dislike so far from their spot?
I like some of the, and again, I don't know, some of the folks we know very well. We see them all the time. We hear from them in the comments. We draft with them, but there's some new folks in here that I've not seen before, so I'm not sure how they're thinking, or like you said, maybe the board fell that way. But I do see some teams right away who, started with couple of the hero RBs and then really hammered away at wide receiver, because there is great value later on. But I also think that there's some teams that they have some real big ceiling performances that I really like as well. So even though the construction may be a little unorthodox, you got week winning upside, and that's kind of what you need at certain times of the season in a redraft league, right? Like, there is waiver wire, right? So if you can get guys, obviously everything presumes health, but guys that can give you ceiling, there's some teams that I think have some, even at the onesie positions, have some big ceiling. So yeah, it's really interesting here. Xavier Worthy going off the board. Did you see the tweet today about Xavier Worthy looking like he was in a pinball machine?
Yeah.
The kid's trying to block, and he literally gets bounced off the outside into the inside, and the inside linebacker just goes boom and hits him. And I know I've had this discussion 100 times. That is why I passed on him in Dynasty, because he is 165 pounds. I've got tons of shares in best ball because he's going to catch long ones, and that's exactly what I'm looking for if I've got Patrick Mahomes in best ball. But in Dynasty, man, he just looked like a middle school. He looked like Bryce Young, looked like a little kid.
I drafted him because I thought that the hype of what he could be with Mahomes would be blown way out of proportion. And so I got to be honest, I'm taking a little bit of an L, because I drafted him with the intention of trading him for value. I just took him as a pick that I thought would be overvalued. And now it's not going that way. Now, like, Rashee Rice is probably getting some sort of suspension, and still it's not worthy to the moon. And I'm like, why didn't I just go with my boy Ladd and just Ladd or Brooks? I should have just taken Brooks everywhere.
They're supposedly, I have to fact check myself on this, but I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like us, they're pretty tuned in, but they said that the court date is now November for Rashee Rice,
which means he could get pushed back.
Which just could be like an Alvin Kamara situation where he gets suspended in 2025, right? Which, whatever. If the Chiefs win another Super Bowl, nobody's going to give a shit. But I think at the end of the day, like, no one will care. I hope they don't. Go Niners. But I think
boy Coleman off 8-3.
There he is. But look, Worthy's going to be. He's going to catch a couple big ones, and I think he has some spike weeks, right? So obviously, we're not talking dynasty tonight. We're talking redraft, and as we get into this tournament here. But yeah, there are some players here coming off this board now in the 7th and 8th round. Zach Moss is really interesting. I've been hearing a lot of the same things you have, right? That Chase Brown is taken, again, it's camp hype. Let's not blow it out of proportion. But they didn't give Moss, they gave him, if my memory's right, a 2-year deal, I think.
Yes, I believe
so. It's not like they paid him to be the guy for the future, right? I mean, it's a contract, but it's not a big one. Chase Brown handling a lot of the first team snaps. I know it's camp, but as you kind of project out this season, do you see Zach Moss and Chase Brown being more of a committee, or do you think that you think Moss still kind of has the edge on the job? How do you see it right now? It's July 31st.
I think it very much, I think the season, as well as pretty much every game, is going to start with Moss as the quote unquote starter. Yeah. But I think it's still going to be a full blown committee where it's not about who starts the game. I think Chase Brown is just going to be a better third down back. I think he's going to be he's a more explosive back. So if they're ever in negative game scripts, I think he's going to be forced onto the field a little bit. But I think they're going to be close to a 50-50, 55-45 split. Yeah. it's one. I think that it's probably good for the team. They need both players to. They're both, they're not. Chase Brown isn't new to the team, so he does have a little bit of edge of kind of knowing the offensive ecosystem. That's going to help in some situations for sure. I think they're going to have a lot of trust in him. But yeah, I see it pretty even. I think the coach is probably going to say a lot of ride the hot hand with that backfield.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's like losing their job though. Is kind of what I'm getting to. I think they're both going to be very, very good. Both will pay off their ADPs.
I was just going to add on. I agree with everything you just said. I was just going to add on this one last little quick thing, which is that the Bengals have historically, when they had Mixon and Pirine was the third down back, and he was very relevant and he was useful, and it pissed Mixon owners off because it was like, oh, here comes a touchdown, and then if he doesn't get in on the first two downs, third down, it's like, well, he's off the field, and if this is the touchdown on this play, that's it for this drive for Mixon. So I do think Zach, I agree with you. I think Zach Moss will be the guy, but I do think Chase Brown's going to be more relevant than everybody wants him to be. I still think Zach Moss is a good pick, similar to how you might take, Najee or Jalen Warren in Pittsburgh, similar to how if you're in on it, you might take Pollard or Spears in Tennessee. But yeah, I don't think that the beginning of the summer, everyone was like, oh, it's Zach Moss and Chase Brown is irrelevant. And I don't think it's that way anymore. I think there's more relevance than people maybe want to admit. So not a bad pick, just something to keep in mind as you start to get closer and closer and read those camp reports. So speaking of camp, anything from camp standing out to you right now as you're kind of going through your research and prep for the season?
I want to say yes, but not really. I'm taking pretty much everything with a grain of salt right now. There's some little pockets of the Chase Brown one, I think it's one of them to watch because it's confirming some things for me that I thought was pretty interesting. On the Cardinals, Zay Jones running with the second stringers and seeing Michael Wilson might actually have a bit of a role that he's young. He had again, he was tied with Khalil Shakir for leading the league in a 100% catch rate. Obviously super small sample size, but like little things like that, I'm looking at particular pockets, but lots of stuff with a grain of salt. I mean, I think that's just setting the stage for how the season's going to start. But I think weeks 1, 2, and 3 are going to be way more impactful. I'm still taking it easy. I'll confirm those reports when we get into the actual preseason and kind of see how that.
I think what I'm looking for is obviously injuries, right? I'm looking for camp holdouts. Like I don't really expect CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase to miss time. I don't think that's realistic, even if they're holding in and waiting for a contract. I also think it's very possible that they get paid before the season starts just to not have that lingering and hanging over their head. Although with CeeDee Lamb, who knows, because Jerry's losing it a bit there. But, well, maybe not a bit, maybe a lot. But I think I'm looking for negative news. I think I'm looking for injuries. I think I'm looking for, anything that's going to, like you said, confirmation bias, right? So like everybody that's the Bijan owner saw the report come out the last 2 days where Zach, my God, what's the offensive coordinator's last name? My brain just went blank. Robinson? Anyway,
I couldn't even
the offensive coordinator in Atlanta. But my point being is that he's saying, Tyler Algier is going to be heavily involved, and Tyler Algier hasn't gone off the board, has he? Oh, shoot. All right. Sorry.
I know. That's why when you got into camp, I'm like, I know.
Already
sorry. Off the board. I know it's tough, man. People, they're moving through this draft at a crazy pace.
I thought this would take full 45 to probably 50, 55 minutes, and then we're at 33 minutes in, and we are absolutely 2 rounds done. So
lightning. Yeah. Ooh, Caleb Williams to get the stack with DJ Moore just came off. I think that's pretty interesting. I like it. I like it. I think I like
not playing tomorrow night. I didn't really expect him to play tomorrow night, but obviously Hall of Fame game, which by the way, last Thursday was the last Thursday until the NFL playoffs with no football. And that made me smile from ear to ear. That made me so happy. I know the game tomorrow night is going to be absolute dog shit, but we're probably still going to watch, and hopefully there's, I'm interested to see what the new kickoff looks like. That I'm actually interested to see. And obviously there's, is Roshan going to play tomorrow night? Is Khalil Herbert going to play? Probably, we'll see some of the guys that you want to see if their relevance is going to rise or fall. But yep, no Caleb tomorrow. And I would highly anticipate as the other teams get started, probably no Jaden Daniels this first game as well. So some of these rookies we may have to, I know we're excited, but we may have to wait a little bit. But are you going to, it's the Bears, it's your team. Are you going to tune in tomorrow night? And is there anything you're looking for in that game?
I'm going to have a lot going on my screens for sure. Because I'm either going to be live streaming tomorrow's mock. If I don't live stream it, I'm planning on going back and I want to do a recap of each of the drafts to some degree. But if I can live stream it, I'm certainly going to try. So it might just be a football night where I've got kind of everything going on at the same time. And, I think because the game is going to be, like you said, not super interesting, it would be fun to do a live stream for the mock tomorrow, because with the game on or about to be on and everything, if we get a live stream going on, for the game not good, it might be fun to just talk some football with people in chat and kind of do that thing. So we might just do a little Q&A, and I'll be our Bears homer telling y'all about my last couple of years in hell, and looking forward to escaping. My goodness, we got
one round. Let's get into the comments here a little bit. Our reigning champ, Rafi69 Bomb. I love Rome as my wide receiver 3. Caden will feed him. What's interesting about that comment, one, I don't disagree, but two, with Deontay Johnson, I actually think Rome's your wide receiver 4, which is even better, because wide receiver 1 status for Deontay Johnson. We anticipate that, new offensive coordinator and Dave Canales will see what it looks like for Bryce Young in year 2. But I mean, what Adam Thielen? I mean, Xavier Legette, but Xavier Legette is a very different body type and a very different route runner than DJ. So I expect DJ to get a lot of targets. What he does with those and what that finish looks like at the end of the year, I don't know. But I like that Rafi
90 balls, man. He's gonna
possible.
Take him in PPR, not half PPR is my thing.
Correct.
That's a big. I think he's gonna have like 2 touchdowns, but I think he's gonna catch 90 balls, and I think he's gonna be, more importantly, he's gonna be huge for moving the chains in that offense. Like the running backs don't have a shot unless he's getting the ball a ton to move the chains.
Yeah. Victorious, I've been paying attention to the earlier mocks in this tournament. I've liked every team picking at the 108 so far. I do actually, because I've been, obviously it's best ball season, I've been hammering away at best ball. I do find myself being a little irritated when I'm at the 101, 102. I understand that's a stupid comment because of the quality of player that's there, but you get the 2 ceiling opportunities there with either CMC or one of the receivers. But then coming back around, it's kind of an interesting spot. So I don't love drafting from the middle, but I do find myself this year, with the way that a lot of the boards are falling, finding that I can find some value there. So Victorious, I believe those camp reports. I know Victorious is in a league with me, and we've been, I'm not going to say the guy's name for obvious reasons, but there's a guy in our league who's, I don't know if he's a QJ truther, or if he's just trying to drive the price up and get him off his roster. And I think it's the latter. I think he's just trying to find any shred of hope, and nobody's going to trade for this kid. And the tweets that have been coming through have been, and I was a little guilty of it too. It's like QJ dropping passes, and then it's like QJ catch one, right? But like it's not been. Poor Twitter.
I feel like that never works. I feel like if I want to sell somebody, I want to talk about how he's going to be out of the league. I'll sell him for nothing, and then that's going to put the thought in someone's mind, like, wait, value?
Yeah.
Right? Like if you hype up a player, everyone just goes like the counter case immediately. Like that's bad trade craft. That doesn't work.
Well, Kendall, I want to ask you a question, but I'm going to save it because I know there's going to be some folks that are dropping off the stream here. Tell the folks where they can find you, where you've got a ton of great content. We do a lot of collaboration. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, for sure. So if you're a fan of the Get Right Network, but you have not seen me or Phil quite yet, you can catch me on my YouTube channel at the Fantasy Football Tavern. Pretty much everything fantasy football, not a specific focus. But if I had a little bit of a slant, I do a lot of market watch, buy, sell, hold type of stuff. Just value. I really do like to solve the draft format each year to the best of my ability, kind of really nail ranges of players that I like. So me and Phil do a lot of collaborations on best and worst picks in various types of formats. So if you find yourself lost in some ranges, these big tiers where you're like, I just don't know who I like or dislike, we'll give you a lot of takes of our favorite and least favorite in those ranges that can kind of make up an entire round of a draft. But redraft, best ball, you name it, and we'll be having a couple of cold ones while we're doing it, hanging out, very chill. But that's where you can find me at. Patreon is up. It doesn't look super pretty. Content, the production quality is low, but the takes are spicy and nice. Strong. So that's nice. That's where you can find me. And
check out to Kendall on the Fantasy Football Tavern, and you can find me, Phil Ruskin, host of the Extra Point, every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Pacific time. You can find me on YouTube. You can also go ahead on Patreon or Spotify and find the podcast version there. A lot of what we focus on my show is Dynasty, finding little edges, finding value, being able to differentiate, like we talked about, some of those league winners, trade value, of course. And then as we get into best ball and redraft season, we'll start mixing in some of those segments as well. So the Extra Point every Thursday night, 7 p.m. live. You can also listen along Patreon and Spotify. So Kendall, I wanted to ask you this question because it has come up. It's a two-part question. Would you trade for Justin Fields? And if you would, what would you pay? I know it's a dynasty question. We're doing a redraft show, but it's fun.
If it's obviously we're super flex for talking about this. So
only super flex.
Second rounder. I'd trade a second rounder if it's not projected to be an early second.
Okay.
I mean that's like your median, right? I'm not saying that's like absolute value. I'm saying if I got to put some more thought into it, I got to look at some rosters, look at some things. But I think that's kind of the median value. I don't really want to go above that. Obviously, I go less than that, right? Like, sure. Anything less than a mid-second, and I'm gonna bite. Anything more than that, I gotta look at what specifically we're talking about. What's it for you?
Here's the two things that I'll say. I'm gonna take the easy route out of my own question. I would do it for a third, but I also think that he's gonna win the job. I do. I mean, I asked you the question earlier about like, what are you looking at camp? That is the one. I don't expect to learn anything from the camp reports, but it is the one quarterback battle that I am actually interested in seeing what happens. Because I think Russ is probably going to start I know he's a little banged up right now, but I think he's probably going to start the year as the starter. And I say that because Mike Tomlin is a good coach. He's a good man. He's one of my favorite coaches in the league. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league. He recruited and brought Russell Wilson in. Obviously, the Broncos are paying his salary, but they're basically giving him nothing, the Steelers, which means they have no commitment to him. He told him he's going to be the guy. And then however many days or weeks later, they go sign Justin Fields. So I think he starts the year, but I do think that eventually, look, it's Russell Wilson. We all know how that's going to go, or we assume we know how that's going to go. I think Fields gives him a better chance to win. So I think if I can get him for a third, I'm in. I'm not ready to pay a second yet, but I do think that's the right valuation if I'm targeting Justin Fields, because I don't think his value can't get any lower, because if it's any lower, he's out of the league. Right? Like he's not even worth it at that point. So just quick dynasty note for those that are still hanging on. If you're interested in Justin Fields, think about it. If it's something you're comfortable with, go grab him, because I don't think you can get him at a better price. And like I said, he's either out the league or there's nowhere to go but up. That's really no, I mean, the downside is you overpay and that's the end of it. But we've got first round guys on our teams that sometimes bust. So Kendall, as we get into this last round, just really quickly, I won't say we're not going to evaluate guys' teams yet, but any surprise picks or anything that you go, because we said earlier in the show that it was pretty close to ADP. So as you do a quick scan of the board, anything that kind of stands out to you?
Yeah, taking a looking for value. Obviously, there's a couple reaches where I'm like, it's a little bit of a reach, but I think it's fine. Like Kincaid at the 410. I think Viking chat was actually talking about, he reached a little bit for Kincaid and Brooks. If you really wanted to get them, I think those are players you can, like, they're absolutely fine to reach on. Made a lot of sense for me. Yeah. But I really want to talk about the value picks. I think a Ladd at 7-1 is particularly interesting. He gets taken over Calvin Ridley in particular, who I'm drafting a lot of Calvin Ridley. I think him at the 7-7 is really, really fantastic. Coleman at the 8-3, I think is that whole range for me is interesting. Like Coleman, JSN, Watson, Addison, etc. is kind of interesting. Like I'm liking Coleman a lot there. I think that's a pretty solid pick. Eckler in the 10th round. Interesting build because he goes as an RB. I mean, I didn't even have to look. Shoot, that RB4, right? I like that pick a lot, especially in builds where I go hero RB. And I can fade for a long time. I really like that pick. When you compare like Eckler's going in the same round as he's going after Julian McLaughlin and Blake Corum. That's I think that's a smash pick. Probably one of my favorite picks on the board right now is probably Austin Eckler. And what's standing out for you while I take another? Ooh, and Dylan Loeb at 12.
That was the one that stands out. That's the one that stands out. Is I obviously I read all the camp reports again. What you choose to believe is up to you, but I do think that what we saw from Alexander Mattison the last year, it was not inspiring. So the kid's from New Hampshire. It's a small school. It's an FCS school. It's not Alabama. It's not Texas. I get it, but we've seen players drafted late have, maybe not dynasty relevance. Maybe he's not going to have an RB1 season, but like in redraft, injuries happen. you need some of these guys that could end up being waiver wire darlings, right? Puka Nacua was the waiver wire darling last year, and you had about 3 weeks, 4 weeks to get him. And if you didn't get him, and he probably won more people championships than was on losing rosters. I haven't looked that up, but like he was that kind of player. So I think Dylan's interesting. I'm with you. I'm buying in more on Austin Eckler. I just have that feeling that because of the connection with Anthony Lynn, because he's more of a pass catcher, I think, again, similar to what we talked about earlier, I think he's going to be kind of that Chase Brown. He's going to be more relevant than people think. Brian Robinson's never been a world beater, so I think there's going to be way more of a timeshare. I think people have written Austin Eckler off for dead, and I don't think that's the case. In Dynasty, sure, but in a redraft league, I think he's going to have some value this year. So I'm with you. I like that pick. And then the other pick that stands out for me as a tremendous value in the 12th round is Flint Rock here getting Jahan Dotson. To me, that's a player. It's a player we've seen. We like. He had a terrible season last year. Everything in Washington's brand shiny new. So I see. I'm not saying it's going to happen because we've seen the bad as we've seen the good. But I see the path for Jahan Dotson. He is a starter. The offense generally will run through him and Terry McLaurin, the passing game. We like Jaden Daniels. So we like Cliff Kingsbury. I think it's a great value in the 12th round. So solid pick there.
All right, I'll we'll go like lightning round a little bit because we'll try to we'll go for another about maybe 10 minutes. And guys, if you're watching, by the way, there is a stream right after this. We're just Get Right's is going to keep it going just about all night, starting at, I don't know how my time zones work, but in 15 minutes they're gonna kick it off. Is it Rasta? Who's it? Tyka? Who's all on tonight? Do you know the lineup?
I think it's Rasta and Frank. I think you and I might hang out a little bit. I'm gonna put my link one more time here in the chat for those that are following along, listening along. Go ahead and subscribe to the Extra Point. Kendall 3 is in there as well. If you missed the show tonight, you can always catch it on our channels, or you can catch it on the Get Right Fantasy Network channel. I don't know. I might jump in there. We'll see. But yeah, let's do a quick lightning round. Let's hammer through them.
All right. My link has been all sorts of jacked up, so hopefully that comes to you. Somebody will tell you how to find my link. Go to YouTube, type it in. The production value is not great for me today, apparently. Okay, yeah, that embarrassing moment aside, I promise. Cold beers, hot takes. Nothing in my moniker has anything to do with production value, guys. You know who you're getting here. But on to those takes. Not so spicy. I think chalk. You want to know why late round quarterback might just be the way to go this year? Tua in the 13th. They have a top 5 projected offense. Probably, yeah. I think 3 or 4, according to Vegas. I mean, it's one of those two probably. But the quarterback. So we like Tyreek Hill, right? We think he's probably going to have a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns. Probably.
I think we like Tyreek Hill. Yeah.
Okay. Jalen Waddle, he's pretty good football player.
Yeah,
right?
he's
playing a lot of yards.
He's good at the football too.
Okay, cool. So 2 of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and we think they're both going to go for 1,200 yards or something like that. Their quarterback almost went undrafted, and he's actual free, right? Yeah. He got the luxury of like, we'll take a dart throw on Kendre Miller because Tua is going to wheel. Like that's why I like late round quarterback. And Jaden Daniels, who could throw for under 3,000 yards and still be just fine for fantasy with his legs. That's why I like late round quarterback.
Brock Purdy in the 12th. I think you may not want all the pieces in San Francisco because of the insecurity of the consistency each week, but Brock Purdy in the 12th, fantastic. We talked about this the other day, you and I. People are he didn't get drafted in this league. At least I'm not seeing it. Matt Stafford. Puka's going where? Can you scroll up to the top? I'm sure Puka went in the first round at the turn. I want to see where Cooper Kupp went. So Puka went the second round, but okay, fine. So Puka goes at the 2-3, and Cooper Kupp probably went in where? The 4th? Yeah, 402. Mm-hmm. And nobody wants Matt Stafford. Like it mind boggles me. So I mean, like if you've got Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, you got a ceiling guy like that, go throw Matt Stafford on as your QB. You know what I mean? Like just go do it.
Man, you want to stand out. If you're Athena, I can say in most drafts I see, from like the 110, 111, I see a lot of Puka at the 110, 111, and then Saquon on the wheel, seeing it flip-flop. If I take Saquon at the 110 and Puka comes back to me, I am absolutely through the moon. That feels real good. I'm liking that.
It's great.
Quite a bit here.
Let me ask you this, because you just mentioned it. Lightning round real quick. Yes or no? Would you take Tua, Brock Purdy, Jaden Daniels as your QB1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Easy. Okay. I prefer to if I can.
Yeah. I want to just go through two quick things here because now that the draft has actually concluded, to me, where's the tier break at running back for you? Because I know where it is for me, but where's the tier break at the ceiling?
Tier break for my RB1s,
Yeah.
or are you talking about like RB or RB2? We could do two. We'll do two if you want to. Tier break for RB1 for me. I'm just gonna read the board. That tier of Cook, Walker, White, Pacheco seems to have risen above it. Right after that, I it maybe not even White, to be honest. Really, probably Cook, Walker. White starts I don't want him as my RB1.
I don't either. The tier break for me is after JT. If I can't get one of the, let me rephrase I'm targeting one of the top 6 guys in my first 2 picks. And I'm historically a wide receiver heavy builder. That's how I like to build my teams. But I just feel so safe. Everything I say presumes health. I feel so safe with what those 6 players can return, both from upside in yardage and touchdown capacity, right? That I feel so good there. I just don't feel that way with Etienne, Derrick Henry, Josh. Like anybody below that, I still feel fine with them. But I really want to have all those players as my wide receivers. Like if I get them out of a draft, where I'm going to try to find a team here. If I came out of a draft with Kyron Williams and Monty, I'm excited by that. I'm not upset by that, right? But I don't know. If I come out with James Cook as my running back 2, that to me is way more exciting, right?
For sure. I think that for me, that there's a big 3 wide receiver leagues in particular is where I'm just expanding my range of, hey, there's going to be a lot of drafts where I don't necessarily go 0 RB, but I do a lot of 4 wide receivers through 5 rounds. Yes. And so I'm taking a running back sometimes in round 4 or 5 because the value is just a blatant mistake not to take. And so I like forcibly have to open, like, it's not my running back 1 through 12, right? As my RB1, I'm saying like who I'm comfortable in my strategy executing with, right? That's
well, like we look at Gazzy Fresh's team, right? And we'll rank all these teams later, but goes with Christian McCaffrey at the 101, comes back with Josh Allen, and then goes and hammers wide receiver, and Gus is his RB2, right, at the 101. Josh Allen is your RB2, right? So I think if you go get Jalen, like let's look at Jalen Hurts. Where are you here? Ramondre Swift, Benson Corum, fine. Jalen Hurts is your RB1. Where's Richardson? Bijan and Richardson with Najee as your true RB2, who's really your RB3 given Richard. So like to me, that's the way that I think if you're going to go what we talk about a lot, hero RB, I think that's the way to maybe fill in that missing gap of the ceiling for the RB2 is to go and try to grab, Kyler Murray, one of the Russian quarterbacks, right? Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, obviously. Those guys are more expensive. That's why I'm targeting Kyler. And again, Joe Burrow to me is where does he go? He goes a full round below CJ Stroud. And to me, like that's the discount CJ Stroud, right? You're paying the premium for the pocket passer and Mahomes. Your second tier pocket passer premium you're paying is CJ Stroud. So yeah, I think if you're going to go hero RB, it's a really good idea to try to target one of the rushing quarterbacks. And again, Kendall and I would both probably say the teams we generally draft are very wide receiver heavy. Any stacks? I was trying to find and see if just anybody really went and grabbed. I know we've mentioned Caleb and DJ Moore already, but do you see any other stacks that you like?
Mahomes and Rasheed.
Okay, I like it.
Going on there. Not as many stacks. I think in this in particular. I'm looking for some like
Dak and CD here for Victorious.
Oh
at the 103. That's I think that's everyone's
honestly, that's
favorite
a smash too. That's really nice.
That's a really great one to have. It's to me that is the equivalent version of Goff and Amon-Ra, right? You get a little higher ceiling with CD than you do with Amon-Ra, and you get a little higher ceiling, with Prescott, but Prescott costs more.
Well, I think in this format too, right? This is 13 rounds, so with roster settings, that makes it a 5-player bench, right?
Right. Yep.
So honestly, in my personal taste, if I'm in a 5-bench format, I'm not saying I'm like completely avoiding stacks, but I'm not looking at it as a plus in 5-bench, just specifically because if this were a real league, the way waiver wires are going to kind of work is I think it really limits your playability and how you can manipulate your bench, because that, if your stack is premium and if you're, like for Victorious, if one, I'll say I like his team quite a bit.
Sure.
I like a lot of the individual players. I got to break down the build itself and some
Yeah,
individual pick situations, but he's definitely making my top 6, if not higher, for sure. But it's gonna he's gonna face a challenge during that bye week. It's almost assuredly an L, and it's one of those I would almost rather take the L that week than over manipulate
100%.
my bench to you know what I'm saying? So
especially if you can afford it.
Yeah, like for me, it's like 5 bench. I'm not anti-stack because I'm never anti-stack, because when it comes to like, playoff league winning upside, if you're good enough to make the playoffs, you kind of need that little extra percentage, like, to get you over the edge. 6, I think you're fine. At 7, you almost have to. It's like it's free. There's so much bench manipulating if you're in a deep bench league, like a 10 team that goes deep on the bench or something like that. So that's why I can definitely understand from a format perspective, 5 bench spots, stacking just not necessary. And there's so many rushing quarterbacks this year, or semi-rushing quarterbacks, that stacking is not as important in my mind if you're going to chase the legs. And you're almost hoping they win with their legs, not necessarily their arms. You just don't need it quite as much.
Week 12, I think, because I've been doing so much best ball, I've been paying at least a little bit of attention to it. Week 12, I think, is one of those kind of nasty, lot of fantasy relevant teams are on bye that week. Like I think Buffalo's on bye that week. I think the Niners might be. So like there's some teams that's like, that's going to take a hit. So I don't worry as much about that in redraft. You got a long way to plan for that and prepare. But yeah, I don't see a lot of other stacks. Dak and CD, Josh Allen.
I think that's it.
Joe Burrow. No.
There might be some late ones we're missing if I
scroll right.
down,
Richardson.
but like
I'm looking for Pittman, Downs. Nope. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's some good teams, man. I think this is going to be fun to kind of wrap up the show here and then go and get our ranks done. Go and look at these teams a little, like you said, a little bit more in depth on the build, and obviously not less on the individual pieces. But what's the ceiling? I'll just share this so people know, because I am one of the graders. I'm looking for roster construction. I'm looking for ceiling performances. I'm looking for some of that week winning upside. So maybe if you're not a guy that's going to finish in the top 5, can you still win me some weeks? And then when I get into my top 6, the way that I like to break it down is once I kind of what I do is just kind of check X or check of like, a couple glances. And then as I start to get my top 6, what I'll do is I'll kind of break that down into, okay, I really like this core of wide receivers and running backs. Who did you pass on? And then that kind of helps me determine, like, well, if you'd had this player, you'd be here at the number 1 spot in my ranking, but because you don't, and you took this guy. So that's kind of how I how I formulate my rankings, as players kind of manipulate the board. How do you take a look at these, Kendall?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. I actually almost threw that in our in our Get Right like just chat room group in phones. I was gonna throw out like, hey, tough grading for me, almost word for word. It's like as a grader, it's hard to decide between. We openly tell everyone like, hey, you watch our channels, so you know what players we generally are higher and lower on. So feel free to play the game and pander to the judges. You can absolutely do that to get in, right? We're playing a game here. But I'm not trying to weight that too heavily. Like there's definitely some situations where I just love that player there, and that's why I think he's a value. But I've been trying to weight it as hard as I can towards what I feel are as close to like objective, slight mistakes or good decisions, right? More the latter. It's more about like finding like, oh, everyone has a good team, because everyone here is a very competent drafter, right? That's why I love doing the Friday Night Mocks, is like everyone's really good. And so sometimes it's just about who executed their strategy a little bit better or worse that day, because everyone kind of is on a similar page. So I look at situations where I'm like, ooh, I don't know why situationally they went there. Even if they're really high on that player, I almost tell myself, even if I'm high on that player and they are, I still think, roster construction wise, or way the board is falling, that's kind of a mistake there. And I kind of count that up. It's my tiebreaker between 2 teams, and it's also if you made too many mistakes. Look, my rankings might be crap this year. They're probably not. We win a lot of leagues. We're usually pretty good. We won't be doing this if we weren't, pretty correct most of the time. But when we're wrong, theory can still be right, across multiple years. And so that's how I'm grading the most, is when I look at, hey, you went with this particular strategy, but in the later rounds and I actually did this in an earlier draft. And I'd be honest and call them out, not because I want to make fun of them or anything. I think it would be interesting to hear their perspective, but I don't remember who it is. They went with a particular strategy where I just really didn't like their last, 4 out of their last 5 picks, I think were almost mistakes. Maybe they like those players, but it was just, they went with couple wide receivers I absolutely would not have taken late, because I think when you get into the last 2 or 3 rounds, I think upside at running back is significantly higher and more league winning than at wide receiver. That's why you see in like best ball, that's why you see a bunch of wide receivers and then running backs, because you're just not winning the other way. It doesn't happen. And so passing up on passing up on the Dylan Lobes of the world in those types of situations, and instead going with not a Troy Franklin. I'm just trying to pick some players out here, but going with like a Jermaine Burton instead of taking like an upside running back, right? I'm not saying like Jermaine Burton's a bad pick where Poots and Boots is here. I'm just saying like, that type of pick where it's like, look, who was on the board? Here's who you could have taken. And when I look at your draft, you should have looked at your draft and seen how it is. So
yeah,
that's hey, we're going a little over, aren't we? Though
I was gonna say, well, there you go. There's some insight into how Kendall and I break these down. So we're gonna wrap the show up. If you're interested, Best Ball Mania 5. Our guy Rasta is going to be in there with Frank. Kendall and I might jump in. We'll see. But we're going to be doing or hosting a Best Ball Mania 5 draft live on Get Right Fantasy Network. So stick around for more content as we switch gears from the redraft space into best ball. Make sure you get over to the Fantasy Football Tavern, give Kendall a like and subscribe, head over to the Extra Point, give me a like and subscribe, helps the channel, helps our network, obviously helps us to stay connected to the community and know what you guys want to hear us talk about. For those at the Get Right Fantasy Network, myself and Kendall, have a great night.
Peace.